Yelen Cross was halfway through his second mug of bitter neurobrew at the Highline atrium when he felt the weight of someone else's attention land on him like a misplaced hand. He didn't look up right away. In the 16 years since the truce of lattice had shuttered the kestrel conflict, Yelen had become highly practiced at not reacting to anything he didn't absolutely have to. His counselor called it hypervigilant disengagement. Yelen called it getting through the day without coming apart. The atrium was built for people who wanted to be seen. Glass terraces cantilevered over a drop that opened onto helisports. Skyline, where shuttle lanes braided between needle-thin towers and drifting freight barges. Yelen came here because it was noisy enough to swallow him. Music, conversations, the soft hiss of the climate barrier, the constant blur of traffic, everything layered together into an unanimous hum. No one bothered him until now. He finally lifted his eyes. 6 feet away stood a woman he couldn't have ignored if he'd tried. She was Iraxi, one of the winged reptilian species that most helix sport residents pretended not to notice unless they were complaining. Emerald scales, but not the slick kind you saw in glossy recruitment posters. Hers were worn, dulled in places, catching the light in uneven flashes of teal when she shifted. A battered cobalt breastplate hugged her torso, the metal scarred with repairs and hairline fractures that spoke of old impacts and newer patchwork. Her hair was the strange part. Iraxi didn't have hair the way humans did, not traditionally, but she wore it long, pale, nearly white, spilling down her back like a deliberate contradiction. It softened the sharp lines of her jaw and the ridges above her eyes. Her wings were folded tight, feathers or something feather-adjacent trembling at their edges. A long tail curled and uncurling at her ankles, as if it couldn't decide whether to anchor her or pull her away. And her eyes bioluminescent, an unnerving sea glow blue. Jalen knew that look. Not the species, the feeling behind it, the raw, scraped-down need of someone trying not to fall apart in public. He'd seen it in his own reflection during the year after Mara died, when he'd wake up at 2:47 a.m. and reach for warmth that wasn't there anymore, then lie perfectly still like stillness could keep grief from noticing him. The Iraxi took a step forward, then another. She moved as though expecting a blow, shoulders tucked in, wings tucked in tighter, as if she could make herself smaller than she was. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice surprised him. Not harsh, not hissing. It had a delicate resonance, like glass singing wind struck softly. "I apologize. I know this is not a place where one should impose, but I wondered if you might help me." Jalen's fingers tightened around his mug. The ceramic clicked against the alloy of his left hand. He wasn't trying to be dramatic. The prosthetic just made noises sometimes. A quiet reminder that half his body belonged to engineers now. "That depends," he said, aiming for neutral. "If you want directions, the transit spine is to blocks west. If you're selling miracle tonics, I'm immunized. If you're recruiting for the spiral order, I already told your outreach drone that my religion is caffeine and minding my own business." Something like a smile flickered across her face, quick, startled, like she'd forgotten she still could. "None of those," she said. Then her tail coiled around one ankle, tight enough to show tension. This will sound extremely strange. I am sorry for the strangeness. Yelen waited. He didn't encourage. Encouragement tended to invite more conversation, and conversation was a door he didn't always want open. The Araxi drew in a careful breath. "Would you?" she asked, and her voice cracked on the word. "Please, hold me, just for a moment. A hug." Yelen blinked. He'd been asked to do absurd things in his life. The militia had once ordered him to crawl through a ventilation canal filled with coolant foam, while carrying a transmitter the size of his head. His 7-year-old, Leah, had once demanded a midnight emergency surgery for a plush lizard because its feelings are leaking. He'd even been asked at a particularly desperate checkpoint to pretend he was someone's fiancé, so they could pass an ID scan without being flagged. But a hug from a stranger, from an Araxi? "I'm sorry," he said slowly. "Did you just ask me for a hug?" The blue glow of her eyes shimmered. She looked down at her hands, taloned and clasped together like she was trying to keep them from shaking. "Yes," she whispered. "I know it is inappropriate. Among my people, physical contact outside family is rare. It is sacred, you might say. But I have not touched another living being in 4 years, 1 month, and 9 days." She swallowed hard. "And I saw you sitting here. The way you hold yourself, it looked like you know how loneliness sits inside the bones." Yelen felt. His throat tightened in a way he didn't appreciate. "I thought," she continued, "perhaps you might pretend, for a moment, that I am not," her voice hit a snag, "that I am not something to fear." She lifted her gaze briefly, and in it he saw the most devastating thing. Not anger, not entitlement, not manipulation. Hope she didn't trust. "I am sorry," she said quickly. "I should not have asked." She turned as if to flee, wings flaring with the movement. Jelen's prosthetic fingers moved before his brain decided anything. His hand shot out, palm open. "Wait," she froze. Her tail went rigid as a rod. Yelen stared at her, feeling the heat of the sun on his face through the atrium shield, and the slow thud of his heart in his ribs. He wasn't sure what made him do it. Maybe it was that word fear. Maybe it was Mera's absence. Still a hollow place in the house that no amount of toys or laughter fully filled. Maybe it was the memory of Leo asking, months after the funeral, why hugs felt thin now, like they didn't reach all the way through. Or maybe the universe simply tossed a small chance at kindness into his lap and waited to see if he'd drop it. Jalen stood. His right leg's servos hummed softly. The joint was newer than his hand, still settling into his gait like a stubborn habit. He was taller than she was by a few inches, broader too, but she didn't shrink away. "Come here," he said, voice gruff with discomfort. The Araxi's eyes widened. Disbelief crossed her face so fast it looked like pain. You would do this for me?" "I'm doing it," Yelen said. "Because you asked politely and you look like you're about to implode. Now step closer before I remember I'm supposed to be a solitary, brooding stereotype." A short sound escaped her, almost a laugh, almost a sob. She approached the way someone approaches a wild animal, slow, careful, prepared to retreat. When she was within arm's reach, Yelen opened his arms. She stepped into the space between. Then her body shuddered the moment his arms came around her. She was warmer than he expected. The cool press of her armor touched his chest, but beneath it he felt the frantic rhythm of her heartbeat, then a second heartbeat, offset, like a duet that couldn't agree on tempo. Her wings trembled against his forearms. Her tail curled around his ankle, gentle but unmistakably anchoring, as if she needed physical proof that he wouldn't vanish. And then she broke. Not like a human. Not exactly. No tears ran down her cheeks, but her entire body convulsed with soundless sobs, and a low, mournful note came from her throat, like wind pushed through a broken instrument. Her claws gripped the back of his jacket with desperate strength. Yelen held her. He'd held dying friends in smoke-choked corridors, listening to them beg for names they couldn't remember. He'd held Mora as the medtech explained that the neural scarring would keep spreading, no matter what they did. He'd held Leo in the dark after nightmares. When his son whispered questions no child should have to ask. This was different. But it wasn't foreign. It's okay, Yelen murmured. Words he didn't even know he still had. You're okay. She clung harder. He kept holding until her breathing eased and the tremor in her wings softened. When she finally stepped back, she wiped her face with the back of her hand, embarrassed by a species that didn't produce tears but still felt them. I do not have words, she said hoarsely. In Araxi dialect there are 19 forms of gratitude. None of them are large enough. Then don't use words, Yelen said. He sat back down and tipped his chin toward the empty chair across from him. Sit. Have something warm, and tell me why an Araxi warrior is wandering Helixport asking strangers for hugs. She hesitated, wings rustling like paper in a draft. You would speak with me still? I've got about 40 minutes before I pick up my kid, Yelen said. I can spend that time watching ads for luxury lung upgrades I don't need. Or I can spend it learning why you look like the universe drop-kicked you into a gravitational well. Your choice. After a long beat, she sat. My name, she said, hands folded carefully on the tabletop, is Suri Amaya, and I believe I am unusually unlucky. Yelen snorted. That's a strong opening line. Her mouth twitched. During the Kestrel conflict, my people remained neutral. We sold equipment to both factions. We did not join your coalition. We did not join the machine kin. We watched. We profited. We told ourselves neutrality was wisdom. Jelen's jaw tightened before he could stop it. I lost friends to Araxi pulse rigs. Ceres's shoulders dipped. Yes, she didn't. Look away. When the truce came, neutrality had a cost. We were not punished formally, but we became unwelcome everywhere. Too cowardly for one side, too opportunistic for the other. We exist between doors that never fully open. And you? Yelen asked, quieter. I was a field medic, she said. I treated whoever bled. Species does not change suffering. Her claws traced a slow line on the table, as if mapping years afterward. I tried to work in civilian clinics. They told me patients would be afraid. They told me my wings would carry contaminants. They told me my hands looked like weapons. Yelen glanced at his own alloy fingers. People are idiots. Sari gave a humorless laugh. I took work where trust was not required. Cargo sorting, waste processing, jobs that keep you invisible. So you came to Helix Sport. Helix Sport is a crossroads, she said. Neutral enough that no one throws stones every day. Here, I can rent a room if I pay double. I can eat in restaurants if I accept the back corner. I can walk the promenade if I pretend I do not hear the whispers. Yelen felt something hot coil in his stomach. He'd seen xenophobia in every uniformed hallway of his life. But hearing it said this plainly made it uglier. And the hug, he said. Why ask a stranger? Ceres's eyes brightened in a way that looked like pain returning. I have not touched another being since my partner died, she said, for years. 1 month, 9 days. There was an accident at the recycling plant conveyor misalignment. They told me it was instant. They always tell you that. I'm sorry, Yelen said. The words were too small, but he offered them anyway. After he died, she went on, I had nothing. No family on this world. No friends who would. Risk association. No one who would place a hand on my shoulder. Because with Araxi it is intimate. Outsiders do not touch us. Outsiders do not want to touch us. Her voice thinned. Do you know what isolation does? I began to question if I existed. If perhaps I died with him and simply continued moving out of habit. Yelen didn't answer. He couldn't, not without admitting too much. Instead he said, What made you pick me? Ceres's gaze held his. You looked like someone carrying absence. His wristband vibrated pickup reminder. He silenced it and leaned forward, elbows on the table. Look, he said. I'm not pretending our stories are the same. Different species, different wars. But I lost my wife 3 years ago. I've done the ghost thing. So here's what I can offer. Sari sat very still. I'm giving you my comm frequency, Yelen said. You call me tomorrow. We meet here again. Not because I'm rescuing you, and not because you're my charity project. Because sometimes one conversation is the difference between sinking and resurfacing. Her eyes widened as if he'd offered her a new spine. You would, willingly, be seen with me. I would, Yelen said simply, be seen with someone who deserves a break. He sent his contact. Ceres's talons hovered over her own device like she was afraid it would vanish. Tomorrow, she said softly. Same time, Yelen confirmed. And fair warning, my kid is a talker. Her glow warmed. I like talkers. The next day became the next week. The next week became a pattern. Sari learned. Yelen liked his neurobrew to bitter. Yelen learned Sari could dismantle a faulty oxygen scrubber with terrifying competence. Leo met her on an afternoon when he'd been dragged along, and within 10 minutes he'd decided her wings were the coolest thing in the known universe. He called her Miss Sky. Sari pretended to be annoyed. It fooled no one. 3 months. Later, Jalen's sister, Minna, showed up unannounced in his kitchen holding a bag of groceries, like it was both a peace offering and a weapon. Tell me I'm misunderstanding, Minna said, eyes narrowed. You've been meeting an Araxi woman multiple times a week. She's been around, Leo, and you didn't think I needed to know? Yelen stirred the stew a little too aggressively, in my defense. I didn't know it would become regular at first. Minna stared, multiple times a week, for months. Time moves differently when you're not miserable, he muttered. Mina's expression shifted, worry pushing through irritation. She'd moved in for almost a year after Mera's death, feeding Yelen real food and refusing to let him turn into a locked door. I'm not mad, she said, which meant she was. I'm concerned. People hate Araxi. You know what they'll say. People say things for sport. And Leo, Minna pressed. He's already the kid whose mom died. Now he's the kid whose dad befriends the scary winged alien. Yelen set down the spoon. Leo adores her. He asked her to teach him Araxi counting. She made him a little charm, this carved glider hawk from her homeworld stories. He sleeps with it like it's a guardian. Mina's posture softened by a fraction. Really? Really? Yelen said, then, carefully, and Suri talks to me like I'm still a person. Silence stretched. Finally Minna sighed. Fine. I'm meeting her. If she's part of your lives, I need to see whether she's likely to eat my nephew. Mostly herbivore, Yelen deadpanned. Though she likes fermented grain paste that smells like a gym locker. Minna grimaced. That's still a threat. Dinner went better than Yelen expected. Suri arrived in a flowing wrap that made her scales gleam like polished stone. She brought Leo a small figurine, an Araxi storm rider, wings spread, carved from dark mineral. This is Ravelin, Suri told Leo solemnly, a guardian in our stories. She crossed a meteor field to rescue a ship full of lost children. I thought she might watch over you. Leo held it with both hands, reverent. She can fly through rocks. In the stories, Suri said, she can fly through anything. Minna watched, wary softening into reluctant approval. Later, while Yelen walked Suri to the transit spine, she said, your sister loves you fiercely. She kept me upright when I didn't want to be, Yelen admitted. Ceres's tail brushed the stones. Thoughtful. I want you to understand something. I would never choose to bring harm to you or to Leo. I believe you, Yelen said. He meant it. The trouble arrived anyway, like it always does, dressed up as paperwork. It started at Leo's school. A classmate, Kellen Worth, picked a fight at lunch, calling Araxi war dealers and scaled leeches. Leo tried to ignore him until Kellen snatched Ravelin's figurine and slammed it onto the floor, shattering one wing. They said Miss Sky is dangerous. Leo sobbed to Yelen later in the nurse's office, face blotchy, fists clenched. They said their parents are going to make her go away. The principal, a soft-spoken Soren with too many eyes to look, kind, warned Yelen not to escalate. The Worth family has influence, the principal said carefully. Conflict could have consequences. For my kids' enrollment, Yelen said, hearing the ugliness beneath the politeness. For stability, the principal replied, eyes sliding away. Stability turned out to mean appeasing bigotry. Within days, complaints appeared like mold. Ceres's residency, Ceres's permit, Ceres's proximity to a minor, the civic authority opened a review. Suri stopped answering messages. She stopped coming to the atrium. When Yelen finally went to her building, she didn't open the door. Her voice came through the intercom, thin and exhausted. Yelen, please, stop. Stop what? He demanded, standing up for you. You are fighting for someone who cannot win, Suri said. If your association with me costs you, Leo, it won't. You cannot know that, she whispered, and I will not be the reason you lose your child. Open the door, Yelen said. To Ra, please. Go, she said softly. Forget you ever met me. He stood there far too long, knocking until his knuckles ached, and she never opened it. 3 weeks without Suri felt like losing a limb again. Yelen went through routines, but everything tasted like cardboard. Leo didn't let it slide. She's staying away because of the mean parents, Leo declared one night, chin lifted. That's stupid. Friends don't disappear because strangers are cruel. Yelen swallowed. Sometimes adults make choices they think will protect people. She's wrong, Leo said. Matter of fact. He disappeared into his room and returned with a crayon drawing. 3 figures under a starfield. A small child with messy hair, a tall human with one silver arm, and a winged Araxi with a tail curving around them like a sheltering ribbon. At the top, in careful block letters, we don't let go. Jelen's eyes burned. She needs this, Leo insisted. She needs to know she's ours. So they went and found authority vehicles outside Ceres's building. Jelen's stomach dropped like an elevator in free fall. Officers in grey stood at the entrance. Someone announced repatriation proceedings like it was a weather report. Yelen tried to push through. 2 officers caught him by the arms. Then Leo slipped under them small, fast, furious and bolted up the stairs. Leo, Yelen shouted, struggling, fear turning his blood to ice. On the 3rd floor, Leo burst into the hallway and skidded to a stop. Suri was being led out of her unit. Wrists bound in magnetic restraints, wings pinned by a suppression harness. Her eyes were dull, emptied by exhaustion. Then she saw Leo. No, she breathed. Little one, no. Leo ran straight to her and wrapped his arms around her legs like a lock. You're wrong, he said, voice shaking but loud. He thrust the crumpled drawing upward. Look, see, it's us. We don't let go. That's the rule. Suri stared at the picture as if it had suddenly become air. I cannot stay, she whispered. The authority can take their rules and eat them, Leo snapped. And every adult in the corridor froze. One officer cleared his throat, deeply uncomfortable. Kid, this isn't. I'm not done, Leo said, planting his hands on his hips the way Minna did when she was gearing up for battle. My dad fought so people could be free. My mom died and we couldn't fix it. Miss Sky makes my dad laugh again. If you take her away, you're being bad people, and bad people don't get to win. Yelen hit the top of the stairs a breath later, wrenching free as the officers released him in surprise. He took in the seeing his son like a tiny shield, Suri bound and trembling. The authority unsure what to do with a child's absolute moral clarity. Yelen stepped forward. His voice came out steady, which felt like a miracle. He's right, he said. Suri Amaya is family, and if you try to take her, you're going to have to go through me. And I'm done being polite about injustice. The hallway held its breath. A sergeant with tired eyes, older, scarred, the kind of person who'd seen too much, looked from Leo to Suri to Yelen. Her jaw worked as if she was chewing on bureaucracy itself. Then she keyed her comm. Central. This is Sergeant Holden at the Amaya location. I'm recommending a hold, 48 hours. Paperwork review. A crackle from the speaker. On what grounds? Holden stared at Leo's drawing. On the grounds that I'm not going to be the one who breaks this kid's world for an administrative error. She cut the line. The hold became 72 hours. Jelen's attorney, an acid-tongued Kishari named Bryn Holt, dug into the worth complaints and found what everyone suspected. Falsified filings, back-channel influence, pressure on the board. Two officials resigned. One quietly vanished into an internal investigation. The repatriation order collapsed under scrutiny. Saris's permit didn't just return, it upgraded. On Tuesday afternoon, she walked out of detention blinking, in the sunlight like someone who hadn't believed there would be daylight again. Leo hit her at a run. This time no one stopped him. Told you, he said smugly as she crouched to hold him, careful even with the harness removed, as if she didn't trust her own freedom. Good people don't let go. Saris's glow brightened. You were reckless, she murmured into his hair, and extraordinarily brave. I got it from my mom, Leo said simply. Dad says she was brave too. Suri looked up at Jelen over Leo's head. Her eyes were luminous, wet with emotion. Her species didn't technically cry. Yelen stepped closer. For a moment they just stood there, two people altered by loss, stitched together by choice. I should apologize, Suri began, for pushing you away, for thinking distance could protect you. Don't, Yelen said. I get it. But next time life throws disaster at us, and it will, don't run. Saris's claws trembled. I do not know how to stay, she admitted. I have spent my life leaving before I am told to go. Then learn, Yelen said. He reached for her hand. Our fingers laced with scaled ones, warm against cool metal. We'll teach you. Both of us. Leo wriggled between them, grabbing a hand from each like it was the most obvious thing in the universe. This is where the story gets better, he declared. Rules for getting better. No being sad alone, no disappearing, and mandatory ice cream. Yelen exhaled a laugh he didn't know he still had. Ice cream is negotiable. Leo narrowed his eyes. I can draw more pictures. Suri squeezed Leo's hand. I believe we should surrender immediately. See, Leo said proudly. She understands family policy. Yelen looked at them, his son, fierce and bright. Suri, wings still folded like she was afraid joy might be confiscated. The city around them glittering with all its noise and cruelty and possibility. And he smiled. They walked home together through Helixport's shining streets, 3 lives that shouldn't have fit. Fitting anyway, bound by a truth a child had written in crayon, and the universe had decided to test. We don't let go.